The gentleman yields back, and I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. We've had a great discussion today about the structure and nature of our republic, and actually how far we've wandered afield from our original founders' intent of having separation of powers. So much power has been concentrated within the executive that actually the lobbyists have gone there now. I don't see many lobbyists here today very concerned about what we're doing. They're all over at the executive branch and at the administration. And in fact, under the Obama White House, Google was co-resident. They hired high-level Google people to run the patent board, to sit inside the White House. So I reject this notion that somehow the executive branch is immune to lobbying. But we've been at a very high level for the most part today, and that's what's made this a really good hearing. We've talked about the structure and nature of government. But Mr. Kleckner, I want you to boil this down to the specific example of a recent rule on the pistol brace and what that means, how many people it's going to affect. Are these civil infractions or criminal infractions? Can you tell us about the pistol brace rule, when it goes into effect, and what the consequences are of letting an agency write law?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've heard plenty today about profits over people, and I think we're putting regulations over people. I don't think we're keeping people safe with more regulations. In fact, I think regulations and rules like the pistol brace one are actually making it more dangerous. On one hand, I love the maxim that every bit of gun control is a claim that gun control doesn't work because they want more gun laws. On the other hand, I see all these regulations are making felons out of otherwise law-abiding citizens. So you asked how many. The Congressional Research Service estimates between 10 and 40 million of these are out there. Most of these Americans do not know that this rule is happening, and even the Americans that do know the rule is happening cannot interpret it, because the ATF is using vague, ambiguous language with weights similar to this, with a surface area suitable for that. These citizens cannot make these determinations on their own, and we're talking about a piece of plastic that was previously approved by the ATF, that people bought maybe even unknowingly. It might have come on the firearm already, and they're going to be made into felons. This is 18 U.S.C. law that ATF is trying to redefine and trying to rewrite, and serious crimes, confusing regulations, going back and forth. I don't see how that's helping anybody.
And when does this take effect? When was it announced? When does it take effect? Is the government undergoing an ad campaign on TV right now telling millions of people they're going to become felons in a few weeks?
No, sir. It was technically published in the Federal Register, but they had 90 days.
I hit refresh on that page every day.
Exactly right. This has changed. They approved these. Another thing we have with the guidance letters is they've been giving separate guidance to each manufacturer. They're not even giving consistent guidance to the industry on what they're allowed to do, so it's conflicting information. That was 2012. A few years later, you couldn't shoulder them. A couple years later, you could. It changes so much, I don't know how someone's going to be able to keep up with what's going on.
But the people who are going to become felons by virtue of an agency making law because there's a different president who hates guns, weren't they assuming, and weren't the manufacturers assuming? Why did they assume it was legal to do what they were doing until this rule went into effect?
They were specifically told by the ATF that it was legal and that they could proceed. And matter of fact, most of these manufacturers have their version of the letter from the ATF on their website that said, these are legal. See, the ATF said it. Some of them even include a copy in the product in the boxes. So all these Americans relied upon the ATF telling them it was good to go, and now they may not even know that it's not. And they're risking being a felon, which, as you know, takes away their right to have any firearm once they're a felon.
It seems like our founders were really wise to put the legislative function in this chamber and in the Senate because we're up for re-election so frequently. But also, I have constituents. We haven't said today, nobody said today that there should be no regulations. My constituents say, just don't change them on me. Let me know what the rules are. Our founders said, the way they set it up required 4 concurrent majorities for a law to change. Think about how intelligent that is. The House had to agree, a House majority, a Senate majority had to agree, and a majority of the Electoral College had to agree in order for a president to sign that bill, and then it had to pass the Supreme Court. How many majorities are required to approve of a bureaucrat changing a law or a rule. As Mr. Moran pointed out, they're not subject to anybody's approval, any voter's approval. Now, you might say the Supreme Court. Okay, the Supreme Court has to approve the regulation, but as Ms. Ho and Mr. Wolfson has pointed out, with Chevron deference, even that majority doesn't have to agree because we'll just defer to the regulators on this. So I think we need to get back to our founders' intent and put the lawmaking authority back in this body. With that, seeing no other members, that concludes today's hearing. We thank the witnesses for appearing before the committee today. We know this takes a lot of time to fly here, to prepare for this, and to put yourself through this. So we appreciate all of you very much for being here and helping us come to an answer, because the answer should come from Congress. It should, on who makes the laws, and I hope we all agree we should be making the law. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days to submit additional questions for the witnesses or additional materials for the record, so you could end up with homework as well. And without objection, the hearing is adjourned.